Have you ever felt pain that cuts deeper than usual? Pain from someone you trusted, someone you let into your heart? It's not the strangers, the acquaintances, or the casual critics who hurt us the most. It's the people we trusted, relied upon, and shared our lives with. The problem is that trust amplifies vulnerability, and vulnerability magnifies hurt. In this video, we'll explore why the deepest pain comes from those closest to us and how understanding this can help protect your heart while nurturing meaningful relationships. Trust is one of the most beautiful yet fragile parts of human connection. It allows us to open our hearts, share our dreams, and depend on others for support. But the closer someone is to us, the greater the emotional risk. When trust is broken, it leaves a wound that is deeper, more personal, and often more confusing than any external conflict. Understanding why we get hurt the most by those we trust is not meant to make us cynical. It's meant to help us navigate relationships with awareness, balance, and compassion. The people we trust the most are those to whom we expose our vulnerabilities. We share our fears, dreams, weaknesses, and deepest desires with them. Vulnerabilities on a street. Vulnerability is an essential part of closeness, but it comes with inherent risk. When someone you trust betrays that openness through lies, broken promises, or neglect, the emotional impact is magnified precisely because they had access to the parts of you that you usually guard. Vulnerability is a double edged sword, allows connection, intimacy, and love to flourish, but it also creates the opportunity for hurt. But it also creates the opportunity for when we open ourselves fully, the heart beats not just with joy, but also with potential pain. Trusting someone means letting them hold a mirror to our authentic selves. The deeper the trust, the more personal the reflection. And when that reflection is mishandled or distorted, it hurts far more than ordinary criticism or rejection. Consider the difference between being hurt by a stranger and being hurt by a stranger and being hurt by a close friend. A stranger's words might sting, but we rarely internalize them. Their influence is minimal because they don't have emotional access. But when a trusted person causes pain, it reverberates through the core of our identity. We question our judgment, wonder about our worth, and even doubt our worth, and even doubt our ability to trust again. This is why betrayal by someone close often feels like it is not just about their actions. It feels like a reflection of our own failure to see clearly or protect ourselves. Vulnerable balloons on the street. Vulnerability also heightens awareness of subtle betrayals. Even small acts of dishonesty, neglect, or indifference can hurt deeply when they come from someone we rely on. A friend who forgets a promise, a partner who dismisses your concerns, or a family member who fails to support you, these are not just minor inconveniences. They pierce the heart because they violate the implicit understanding that trust creates. The emotional weight of these actions is compounded by the fact that we invested care, love, and belief in the person. Interestingly, the same vulnerable wounds that leads to pain also makes relationships meaningful. Without exposing our inner selves, intimacy cannot exist. It is precisely because we let people in that we experience connection, joy, and love. Pain and vulnerability are intertwined. One cannot exist without the other. Recognizing this allows us to approach relationships with balance, not naively, but with mindful openness that protects the heart while allowing genuine connection. Another factor that magnifies hurt is the emotional memory associated with trust. When someone we rely on disappoints us, the brain records not only the specific event but also the emotional context of trust. This creates a vivid memory of betrayal that can resurface unexpectedly long after the initial incident. Awareness of this mechanism helps in understanding why trust violations feel heavier than ordinary conflicts. They're not just about the event, but about the emotional terrain in which they occurred. Ultimately, vulnerability is the reason why people get hurt the most by those they trust. The emotional exposure, the intimacy, and the belief in someone's integrity create fertile ground for pain when that trust is broken. But understanding this principle also offers a path forward. But understanding this principle also offers a path. It reminds us to choose carefully who we trust, to invest wisely in relationships, and to cultivate resilience in the face of inevitable human imperfection. One of the reasons people get hurt the most by those they trust is that trust naturally comes with expectations. When we allow someone into our hearts, we assume they will act with care, honor their promises, and respect the bond we share. These expectations are not demands, they are an emotional framework that gives relationships depth, meaning, and stability. However, when these expectations are unmet, the disappointment cuts far deeper than ordinary setbacks because it violates the implicit understanding we had of safety, loyalty, and love. Expectations are an inevitable part of human connection. We expect friends to listen, partners to be supportive, and family to show understanding. These are reasonable loons on the street. These are reasonable loons on the street. But expectations are fragile. They require mutual effort and alignment. When someone fails to meet them, especially repeatedly, the emotional impact is magnified because it is a direct challenge to the trust and faith we invested in them. Unlike casual interactions with acquaintances, these disappointments feel personal, targeted, and often undeserved, which intensifies the pain. Another layer of complexity is that expectations are often unspoken. We may assume someone knows how we feel or should act in certain situations. When their behavior falls short, we experience hurt not only because they acted differently, but because our unarticulated hope or belief was violated. This type of emotional exposure is subtle yet profound. It teaches a painful lesson. People cannot always meet the standards we hold in our minds. And when expectations collide with reality, our heart bears the brunt. It's also important to recognize that expectations are rooted in love, care, and hope. They emerge because we believe in the person, invest in the relationship, and envision a shared future. When these expectations are unmet, the betrayal feels magnified precisely because it comes from someone whose integrity and alignment we assume. The pain is not just about the act itself, but about the emotional risk we took in opening our hearts. The greater the investment, the heavier the disappointment. This emotional exposure is why trust without awareness can be dangerous. While we cannot eliminate expectations entirely, we can manage them with mindfulness and realistic understanding. Accepting that humans are imperfect allows us to navigate relationships without being crushed by unmet hopes. It does not mean lowering standards or avoiding closeness. It means combining love and connection with discernment so that when disappointment occurs, it does not devastate our emotional stability. Disappointment often serves as a mirror, reflecting both the limits of the other person and our own reliance on them for fulfillment. When someone fails to meet our expectations, it can awaken a deeper awareness that our peace, joy, and sense of worth cannot be entirely dependent on another person's actions. Emotional resilience grows when we recognize that while relationships are precious, our internal equilibrium is ultimately our responsibility. Expectations also shape the trajectory of future interact actions over time. If unmet expectations over time if unmet expectations of tension, resentment, and emotional fatigue, even small instances of neglect or inconsideration add weight to the relationship, subtly eroding trust and connection. Awareness of this dynamic allows us to respond consciously. We can communicate needs clearly, adjust expectations realistically, or choose to step back when patterns of hurt persist. This protects our energy while preserving the possibility of authentic connection. In essence, expectations create emotional exposure because they intertwine hope, vulnerability, and trust. The greater the expectation, the more one risks disappointment. When it is unmet, understanding this principle empowers us to navigate relationships with both heart and clarity. We learn to trust thoughtfully, love intentionally, and remain emotionally resilient when reality does not align perfectly with our hopes. By managing expectations wisely, we can preserve honor our connections, and reduce the intensity of hurt without closing our hearts to those we care about. The people we allow closest to us, family, friends, partners, mentors, have the most access to our thoughts, emotions, and daily life. Proximity intensifies connection, but it also magnifies pain. The closer someone is to you, physically, emotionally, or mentally, the greater their influence on your mood, your choices, and your well being. When trust is broken or expectations are unmet, the hurt is amplified because the impact is felt not in isolation but across multiple areas of life. Proximity makes betrayal more personal. If a stranger disappoints or insults you, it can sting, but the emotional wound is often limited because they don't have a stake in your life. When someone you live with, share your dreams with, or confide in causes pain, the wound is multidimensional. It touches your daily burr, routine, your emotional rhythm, and your sense of security. A partner's neglect can make a home feel cold. A friend's betrayal can make social spaces uncomfortable. A friend's betrayal can make social spaces uncomfortable. A family member's criticism can reverberate in your self worth. For days, the closeness of these relationships amplifies the reach and intensity of emotional pain. Proximity also means repeated interaction, which magnifies the effect. You cannot always avoid seeing or interacting with someone close to you, so the emotional exposure continues. Each encounter can trigger old wounds, reignite disappointment, or reinforce feelings of betrayal. Unlike distant acquaintances whose words or actions are fleeting, close relationships involve ongoing engagement, which can make recovery from hurt slower and more complex. The emotional energy needed to navigate these relationships increases, leaving you fatigued and vulnerable. Moreover, proximity fosters deeper attachment. We naturally invest more of our time, energy, and love in people who are near us. this attachment makes their actions more impactful. When they affirm, support, or inspire us, it feels rewarding. But when they fail, hurt, or betray, it feels devastating. The emotional swing is wider because the same closeness that nurtures joy also carries the risk of deeper pain. Closeness and trust create a powerful emotional bond, which is both beautiful and delicate. The influence of proximity extends beyond feelings, it shapes identity and decision making. Those closest to us often play a role in shaping how we see ourselves, our values and our choices, our values and our choices. When they hurt us intentionally or unintentionally, it can create internal conflict, self doubt, and even confusion about our own judgment. The pain is compounded because it challenges not only our trust, but also our perception of ourselves within the relationship. Awareness of the power of proximity allows us to navigate relationships more wisely. We learn that closeness is a privilege that comes with responsibility, both for the other person and for ourselves. We can cultivate healthy boundaries, communicate openly, and create emotional space to protect our well being while maintaining connection. Proximity does not have to be dangerous, but without awareness, it can magnify both vulnerability and hurt. Ultimately, proximity amplifies influence and pain because closeness intensifies emotional stakes. The deeper the connection, the greater the opportunity for joy and for hurt. By recognizing this, we can approach relationships with both heart and discernment, valuing intimacy while protecting our emotional balance. We learn that the people closest to us can shape our happiness profoundly, for better or worse, and that careful navigation is essential to preserve peace, trust, and personal growth. While trust can be broken and hurt, can feel unbearable, it is possible to heal without completely shutting your heart. The people who hurt us the most are also the ones we care about the most, and often the relationship itself holds value if approached with awareness and wisdom. Forgiveness is not about excusing bad behavior or pretending the pain didn't happen. It is not about excusing bad behavior or pretending the pain didn't happen. It is about freeing yourself from the burdery of boundaries, expectations, and emotional safety. Forgiveness begins with awareness. Understanding why hurt occurs allows you to separate intention from impact. Sometimes the person who hurt you acts out of their own limitations, fears, or misunderstandings rather than malice. Recognizing this doesn't justify their actions, but it prevents you from internalizing the pain as a reflection of your worth. Awareness gives perspective. Hurt is a natural part of close human relationships. And being affected is not a weakness, it is a sign of yo. It is a sign of your emotional depth. Another aspect of healing is reframing expectations. As we explored earlier, unmet expectations create vulnerability. Awareness allows you to adjust your perspective on what others can realistically offer. By holding people accountable while understanding human imperfection, you prevent repeated disappointment without becoming cynical or closed off. Forgiveness becomes a tool for emotional freedom, enabling you to move forward without carrying the weight of anger, resentment, or distrust. Boundaries play a crucial role in this process. Forgiveness does not mean removing limits or tolerating repeated harm. It means making conscious choices about how much access someone has to your energy, time, and heart. Healthy boundaries protect your emotional well being while preserving the possibility of a meaningful connection. They ensure that trust is rebuilt gradually based on consistent behavior rather than wishful thinking. Awareness combined with boundaries creates a balance where trust can coexist with self protection. Forgiveness also has profound personal benefits. When we forgive, we release the mental and emotional energy spent replaying the hurt. The mind becomes lighter and the heart becomes more spacious. This does not erase the memory of pain, but it transforms it into a lesson rather than a burden. You learn more about human nature, your own values, and the way relationships function, all while reclaiming inner peace. The energy that would have been consumed by bitterness is now available for growth, love, and meaningful engagement with life. Moreover, forgiveness does not mean returning to the same level of intimacy immediately. Trust can be rebuilt gradually, step by step, through observation of consistent actions. Awareness allows you to discern whether a person's behavior aligns with the values you hold dear and whether the relationship and be safe and nurturing again. It is a process of conscious evaluation, not blind optimism. By combining forgiveness with awareness, you cultivate relationships that are authentic, balanced, and mutually respectful. Forgiveness is also an act of courage. It requires facing the pain, acknowledging it, and choosing not to let it define your emotional state. It is a decision to preserve your heart's capacity for love, joy, and connection rather than letting betrayal harden or shrink it. Awareness ensures that this courage is tempered with wisdom, preventing repeated harm while allowing meaningful bonds to continue. Ultimately, forgiveness and awareness heal without losing trust because they transform hurt into understanding, resentment into clarity, and vulnerability into conscious strength. They do not erase the lessons learned from being hurt by those we trust. They preserve them, but they preserve them, but they prevent the pain from controlling our emotions, limiting our growth, or shutting down our capacity to connect. In 2026, cultivating forgiveness and awareness will be the key to maintaining meaningful relationships, protecting your peace, and allowing your heart to remain open even when it has been broken. Life teaches us that the deepest hurt often comes from the people we trust the most. This is not a punishment, it is the natural consequence of vulnerability, expectation, and closeness. When we open our hearts, we allow both joy and pain to enter. Being hurt by someone we care for is never easy, but it is a sign of the depth of our connection and the courage it takes to trust. The key is awareness, understanding why the hurt occurs, recognizing our own expectations, and seeing human imperfection with clarity. Coupled with forgiveness, this awareness allows us to release resentment, protect our peace, and grow stronger without closing our hearts. Boundaries preserve trust while God Inga energy and reflection transforms pain into wisdom. Remember, the people closest to us can shape our happiness profoundly, for better or worse. By choosing awareness, compassion, and conscious boundaries, we can navigate relationships with love, clarity, and resilience. Hurt will come, but it need not define you. Your heart remains open, your mind clear, and your life enriched with meaningful connections that lift you rather than weigh you down.